Okay, this is the story of Megumi Fushiguro, right? So Megumi Fushiguro was born to, well, a part of, he has Zenin blood, right? Zenin clan blood. So he was sought after by the clan and other things, right? Because he's a child, but like he's not like his dad. See, his dad is Toji Fushiguro or Toji Zenin, and that guy had a heavenly pact. That means he didn't use jujutsu sorcery. He used curse tools. That's how he had to fight against curses. And he was a sorcerer hunter. He didn't like his people. They treated him like shit and other stuff. But then he, kind of just, he wasn't there for his kid that much. He wasn't there for Megumi. So Megumi grew up and he was, you know, Gojo did some things. His mother was just, dead, gone. They were not there for him. So then, Gojo steps in and he's like, here, I'll be your like benefactor. I'll be your, guardian, and I'll teach you, jujutsu sorcery, and you'll go to school at Jujutsu Tech when the time's right. And he's like, okay, I guess I have no choice in the matter because he's just some boy at that point. And Gojo's like, yeah, I'll take care of you. And Gojo was taking care of Megumi for a while. And then eventually, Megumi starts school at Jujutsu High School, right? Jujutsu Tech. And you see it in episode 1, he's out there and he's looking for the Sukuna fingers, right? Because he knows about, how deadly they are. And if a curse got their hands on that shit, right, it could spell the end of, Japan and even the world. And he was looking for these fingers, and he found, he found a box that it was in. The finger wasn't there. The finger was with, um, Yuji Itadori, and then he took that to the occult club, and then he was like, "Damn, I have to find Yuji Itadori." He found him at the hospital, because his grandfather had died, Yuji's grandfather, that is. And he was like, okay, well, I'm sorry for your loss, but did you, you found that finger, right? And he's like, yeah, the finger was, something we wanted to dissect at the occult club. They're looking at that shit right now as we speak. And he's like, oh shit, that's not something you want to like fuck with. You're gonna let out like cursed spirits, and they'll be after your friends, and they could die. They're in trouble. We have to go save them real quick. And they're like, okay, let's get to the school. And he got to the school and he summoned his divine dogs, or shadow dogs, the Shikigami, the two dogs, the black one and the white one. Part of the 10 shadows technique that he has, you know. And he summoned those dogs, and they went in there and they found the girl, and they found the guy too. That are part of the occult club. Those boys, and that boy and girl. They found them, and he was like, I have to get this finger and make sure the curse doesn't absorb it or eat it. Yuji comes through the door, or well, not through the door. He comes through the window, and he's trying to get that finger too. And then Megumi's like, yo, you can't eat that. You will probably die. There's only a 1 in a million chance that you survive and become like a host for like Sukuna. And he ate, or usually ate the finger, and he just sat back and witnessed what the hell happened. And Sukuna had emerged, and then he was fighting in Sukuna for a little bit. It wasn't really a fight. He had no chance. He got his butt kicked. But then Gojo came to save the day, and he was all right. You just watched Gojo, take down Sukuna. Well, really, they witnessed Yuji hold Sukuna back and like take control. And they were like, this guy could be useful for getting rid of the Sukuna fingers and Sukuna in general. He'll consume all the fingers, and then they'll kill him. in doing that, they'll kill Sukuna as well. And that's what the plan was. Feeding him fingers along the way and shit like that. Because he has Sukuna has 20 fingers. And Megumi was already a student at Jujutsu High, and then he had classmates that he was gonna have to he crossed to help out and other things. As Megumi's the guy who like knows about Jujutsu sorcery, he came up with it. Ten Shadows technique. That's a part of the Zenin clan. That's one of their you know um, that's the curse technique that they use. Like there's always somebody in that clan that has that technique. Gojo is you know teaching them. And he's basically got Megumi like as the leader of that group because he knows how to navigate exercising cursed spirit. Nobara and Yuji don't know how to do that, so they have to he calls to Megumi and his knowledge of doing that. And he's like a second grade sorcerer at that point in the series, I think. In the beginning, and they have Gojo has them go into the building and exercise a curse, just Nobara and Yuji, and then they were able to accomplish that. Megumi was just sitting aside, and then the next task, Gojo was gone. They had to go inside of this, school or whatever, and find a guy, you know, but he was dead. They ended up finding the finger bearer curse, right? One of Sukuna's fingers. But this curse, right, was, a special grade. And Ikeji, or whatever the fuck his name is, he told him to he told him to run from that shit. If it's a special grade curse, we have to get people who can exercise that shit. You guys are not, qualified to hunt that shit down. So you have to turn and run away if you catch signs of one of them. And that's what Megumi did. But Yuji ended up staying behind, and then Sukuna appeared, and then Megumi had to fight against Sukuna again. During this time, um, he brought out Nue and some other Ten Shadow creatures, and it wasn't doing shit to Sukuna. Sukuna was like, okay, these guys, kind of weak. But then Sukuna kind of slowed down for a minute because he saw Megumi hitting a pose. See, this pose was a pose to summon a divine Shikigami, divine General Maharaga, but he didn't summon him yet because what stopped him from summoning it was Yuji taking control of his body again. However, Sukuna took his heart out, right? Before they started fighting. So then when Yuji came back into his body, he had died right then and there in front of him. And then they thought he was dead for a while. Megumi and Nobara were like, damn, we lost him, and now it's whatever, we have to keep, doing what we do. It's sad that he died and other things, but then he comes back, and then they're like, damn, we thought you were dead, and he's like, yeah, isn't it a surprise that I'm alive? And then they go to the exchange event. They fight against Kyoto school. Todo's people, and who was he fighting against? I'm trying to remember who the fuck he was fighting against. Noritoshi Kama, that's who he is. And he was a blood manipulation user from the Kama clan, and they were fighting against each other. Inumaki showed up, and he was like, "Yo, there's a cursed spirit." Who pulled up on him? It was none other than Hanami, one of the cursed spirits, special grade cursed spirits. And they had to run away from it. He summoned the elephant. He summoned, like all kind of shit. He's trying to, fight against this cursed spirit called Hanami, right? But then, she or he, cause I call it a he, sent like these demon seeds, these fucking cursed seeds, and it went inside of his chest and it started, fucking with him. Kind of like Kurama from Yu Yu Hakusho is how that ability worked. But that happened, and then after that happened, or Maki was there, and they tried to like take him down, but it didn't work. And then Toto showed up and was like, "Hey, get him to safety, because he's got this curse going on with his chest. He has to get healed and other stuff." And they're like, "Yeah, okay," and got him out of there. And then after that happened, you know, Gojo, took care of Hanami and other things after Yuji and Toto did some shit. But then Kenjaku and the cursed spirits were able to summon the cursed womb death paintings. Choso, Kechizu, and Iso. Iso and Kechizu were sent to like fuck with them, kill them basically. But Gumi was looking for, cursed spirit. Cursed spirit ended up being one of Sukuna fingers, and he told Yuji and Nobara to go do the other things, those other guys, Kechizu and Echizu, or Kechizu and Izo, and then he was fighting a special grade curse by himself, inside of a cave. When he was fighting this cursed spirit, he had to learn, or he learned. He thought back to what Gojo told him. Gojo was like, you're a good guy at like working with the team, but what happened if you were like by yourself and you had to like fend for yourself? He's like, you gotta know how to like be a little more selfish with your using your abilities and shit, and like don't be afraid to like show off your power, and like because you need to save yourself. You're gonna need to be able to save yourself someday. And that was the moment where he opened up his domain expansion. He was Chimera Shadow Garden, and he was able to he was able to defeat that special grade curse spirit, and he retrieved one of the fingers by himself, and that got him a recommendation for first grade sorcerer, to become a first grade sorcerer, to move up in rank at the end of season 1. And then um, after that, Shibuya incident happened, right? He was with Nanami for a little bit. Then they split up. And they found Yuji. And they fought against a guy who used a curse technique called inversion. And they had to fight against this guy. And this guy wasn't that powerful. They were able to defeat him. God damn, I'm trying to remember. He fights against some curses for a little bit. Then he eventually gets to, where Dagon is. And he's fighting against Dagon is one of the special grade curse spirits too. And he's fighting against Naruto Zenin and Maki Zenin and um, Nanami too. Inside of a domain expansion, he's able to like break through and create a little hole. And he said, "Yeah, you gotta get out of here. I can only hold it open for so long." But when he did that, somebody else appeared. Um, it was his father, Toji Zenin, appeared, and he like killed Dagon within his domain, which was like crazy because there was three, curse or um, three Jujutsu sorcerers in there who couldn't like handle that shit. But then when he came through, he made like easy work of him essentially. Um, and then he went after Megumi, and Megumi had to fight against his own father, who was a like zombie essentially. He came back to life through means of some bitch's curse technique. He ended up getting his ass kicked pretty bad. But then, the curse technique wore off, and then Megumi was like, "Okay, I, need to get the fuck away, because this guy named Haruto was after his ass, chasing his dick, and Haruto was like, I'm gonna kill this guy. He's a juicy sorcerer, so um, he was like, damn, this guy keeps hunting my dick. I'm gonna have to summon Maharaga. And like he, in the past, he almost summoned Maharaga a couple times, but this time he like had no choice. Like there was no way out. So he summoned Maharaga, but the thing was, with summoning of Maharaga, you have to put him in a subjugation ritual. So you have to defeat him with curse techniques, and then after that, that's when he's like your tool, and you can use Maharaga, you can summon him as the user of 10 Shadows technique, and he can pull anybody in to like participate with um this subjugation ritual. So he was in it. Haruto was in it. But then like he like passed out because like he used all of his energy to summon Maharaga. Um, so Sukuna showed up there, and then that's when that fight happened, and that was like the best fight of season 2, y'all. I think, yeah, I think it was, yeah, it was. uh, and then that happened, and Megumi was just like, yeah, he was there, and then he wasn't. Sukuna did defeat Maharaga, which then Maharaga went back to being, a cursed spirit that Megumi can summon or whatever. But that was a move for later seasons. You're gonna have to like if you read the manga, you know what I mean by that. Like that was a move set up for like future seasons. Like I said, and I don't talk about the manga on here, so unfortunately, this is where it ends. And they're ready for you know culling games. Season 3. They're wondering about how can they unbox Gojo because he got boxed in. And they're like, they wish that they could have got there before, helped him out, or, but it's too late now. They have to figure that shit out without him. Yuta Kotsu, they're like putting a lot of faith in him to like, get shit done and like hold down while Gojo's out. And then there's him, and then there's Yuki Sakumo, and they're gonna be in season 3 too. And Megumi's gonna do some things in season 3. He's gonna have some fights and other stuff. But that was the life of Megumi Fushiguro as of like right now. But like I'm telling y'all, I'll leave some questions. Is he gonna like stay cool? Is he gonna like die? Is he gonna live? Or something interesting gonna happen in the story to like twist it certain ways and make things harder for the um antagonist group or the protagonist group. I don't know. Oh, actually, I do know, but I'm like playing games with you. But stay cool, call on the corner because that was the life of Megumi Fushiguro as of right now. There's like 2 more seasons of Jujutsu Kaisen to come out in the next like 5 years. There's the season coming out this year, and then like I don't know because they like to wait a long time to like make this anime happen. So stay cool, call on the corner. Until then.